DBS community, welcome back to another Dragon Ball Super video here with Chris, and today this is a video that I've been working on for a little bit of time, probably actually a little too long, just because I've had some other stuff that's come up. But this is the first of a deck that I'm picking versus another deck. And if you guys watched the Dark Mechikabura versus the meta video that I put out, I was talking about the three of the biggest decks in the format, being Shin, Gogeta's, and King Piccolo at the time, which is still kind of relevant as of right now. And I wanted to make a video kind of going over those matchups. So the first one's going to be Shin here. The King Piccolo one, I'm probably going to do last, because I don't know by the time I actually finish that video if there's going to be some form of a inkling of a ban list coming out for the next set. So I don't really want to talk about King Piccolo if it's going to get banned, but I definitely think like U7 Goku is probably one that I can just do, because that is a pretty annoying matchup for this deck. Definitely something that we need to consider if you are playing Mechikabura. So make sure you guys like and subscribe. Hopefully you guys like this sort of content. This is the first one of these really thorough breakdowns that I've done over a deck v deck matchup. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you guys do, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, post a comment, let me know what you guys think. There also will be a link to the Patreon down below, where I do post deck lists that I do at locals, as well as do some coaching and some other stuff on there as well. So before we actually get into the matchup, we need to talk about kind of what what it is that this deck does, right? What does Shin really do kind of as a deck, right? So one of the big things is Shin has one of the most powerful end game mechanics in the game now since 10-drop Fu was banned, right? So they just tap 6 and they play 7 dragons out, right? So for 6 energy, you can play probably close to 20 energy worth of cards, right? And that is incredibly powerful, and all of these cards have their effects active, and not only can they swing with all of them, at the end of the turn they can restand all of them, right? That's incredibly powerful. So when you get to turn 6, it's really difficult to actually slow this deck down, right? They can just continue just to a reoccur value, and that's incredibly powerful considering they use the drop area as a second form of resource, almost like a second hand in a way. This is a very powerful deck, with it being able to pivot from control and aggro. Two very different sort of play styles, but both of them able to play things for very cheap, as well as just go tall and wide, which is incredibly powerful, and most decks can't really deal with it. They have to fold under the pressure that this deck can actually put out, as well as the majority of the deck being searchable. Most of the deck is are shadow dragons, and I always refer to this deck as just a Shin deck. It's not a yellow deck. It's really not a yellow deck. Like, they play a few yellow staples, but not a lot of them. Most of the cards in this deck are going to be shadow dragon, right? And having a deck where almost everything is searchable, and you have synergy with almost every single card, it's incredibly consistent and also very annoying to deal with. Now, for us, funny enough, the Mechikabura matchup is probably one of the easiest matchups you can play into Shin when you are the Mechikabura player. You shouldn't really ever lose this matchup. If you do, it's either by really bad RNG, or from draws, or just maybe misplaying or not knowing the matchup very well. This is probably the easiest matchup for Mechikabura, and as long as Shin's in the meta, Mechikabura is something that you can just play, and generally if you're going to be playing against Shin players, you're probably just going to dominate them. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, right? One of the biggest things that we actually can do to actually combat this is we have insane drop area control. If you guys know from the Mechikabura deck, a lot of stuff you play, even your free play, your Dragon Balls, stuff like that, you can warp stuff from the drop area, and you have very, very good spot removal, as well as board wiping potential. And this matchup is really based off of outvaluing your opponent, right? You're kind of plussing 2 against a Shin player, being able to remove things from their board, hand, and or drop area, as well as being able to play your own cards, which grants you your own value. And it's a very very steady slope upwards for you whenever you start to kind of get rolling with this deck, because at a point you're going to get to turn 4, turn 5, they may have 15 cards in the warp, right? And they're all from you just being able to warp stuff, right? And it kind of slows down the game for Shin, and Shin really has to expound more energy every single turn to kind of get around what it is that you're doing. So for some starting hands, so there's a lot of cards in the match in this archetype that you can play, but these are some of the cards that you should really look at as a potential starting in your hand or after the mulligan, right? So these 4 cards here to the left are definitely the 4 cards you want to see in your opening hand. Generally, any matchup, you want to see a combination of the 2 balls. So you want to see a dark ball and a yearning. You want to see one of each of these generally in your first hand, right? You want to be able to pitch them when you feel like it, and starting out 2 less Dragon Balls makes it a little bit easier for you to awaken, right? Which is really consistent in this deck. You're probably awakening turn 3. Depending on how your opponent's playing, you may awaken turn 4. It just depends on how you want to play that early stuff. And as well as Toa, as well as Salsa, these give you 2 cards that you can really utilize to gain early advantage by stopping your opponent from playing things, as well as being able to gain hand advantage and slowly start to rip away at the drop area, right? On the right side here, we have some cards that are optional for your opening hand. Now these 2 here are just 2 unisons that I picked. Any of the 1-drop unisons that you want to play, whether it's Smoke Dragon, whether it's Toa, Dark King Mechikabura, or Shin here, Shinron, whatever. It's a dragon, right? Any of these cards here definitely good to see in your opening hand. You're probably not going to play them turn 1, but you definitely want to see a unison in your opening hand, as well as part of the Poutine engine, whichever part of it you're running. The 3-drop, the other 3-drop is the Sorceress one, the Barrier one. It is very good, but these 2 are definitely better for what you want to see opening, because it can definitely generate you a lot more value. Now, going into that, our turn 1 is pretty self-explanatory, right? So turn 1, you charge, obviously, and then you play if you have one of these cards in your hand. Now, this is if you were going the true turn 1, like you are going where you can't attack, right? So you would play one of these. Poutine obviously allows you to start top card of your deck, as well as Shenron and Mechikabura can cycle a card. Now you have to be careful, because if you are going first and you play Mechikabura, there's a good chance that your opponent may just they can't kill it, but they definitely may try to, like if they're playing the aggro matchup, they definitely may try to chicken and then maybe take 5k off just to kill the unison, which then just kind of kills your whole plan, right? More likely they won't. They'll probably just play around and just swing at your leader, just because if they swing at the unison, it's not really granting them any value other than just getting rid of it for you. But the biggest thing is to not use any of your balls. That is the biggest thing, and that's one of the big things when I watch Mechikabura players. Whether I watch, I'll watch them practice, or I will watch tournament play, or people, posting, videos on YouTube, because I watch a lot of that stuff. And a lot of Mechikabura players I watch, and they will use this ball technique on turn 1 with no targets, right? You really, in this matchup, you really want to focus on using the ball combination to warp something out of your opponent's drop area. Even your Awaken effect, right? Like, if you guys don't know, your Awaken effect does warp a battle card from the drop area. So utilize that. You need to make sure you're getting value out of every single one of those effects, because it's going to add up, and it's going to really, recur this, incredible, advantage that you're going to have over them late game. Now, also optional, you don't actually need to play anything turn 1. If you just don't feel comfortable playing anything turn 1, don't play it. I think Poutine's probably the best play turn 1, but if you don't want to play something, you just want to sit there with 1 energy up, be my guest, right? There's not much they can really do turn 1. Their turn, they're going to play a ball, swing at leader, and pass, right? So now if you're going second in that whole, conversation, right, you want to make sure that you don't swing with your leader, right? That's a big problem. This is why we want to start with 2 Dragon Balls, right? If you start with 2 Dragon Balls, you're not going to have to swing, because you're going to have the 2 Dragon Balls in your hand already. And the main reason is because they're going to use the 4-drop. They're going to, stop your leader from attacking, and now you're going to lose a turn on your turn 2 where you can't actually attack, and that ends up, setting you behind quite a bit, right? Now, turn 2. Turn 2 is when you can start using the ball effects, followed by either a Salsa and or a Toa. Now, Salsa is very, very good for pushing pressure. This is where you want to play it, warps a card from their hand, and then you can swing, start warping stuff from the drop area, right? This is probably going to die next turn whenever they swing with the 9-drop, but it is what it is. Also, your opponent may haze this card, depending on how bad their hand is. They may decide to waste a haze, which isn't the worst thing in the world, right? But it does, kind of set you back still. But as long as you get a swing off with this card, it's very, very good. Now, if they have a 9-drop in play, you're not playing a Salsa, right? Because you're not going to get any effect from it. So instead, we're going to play Toa, right? And Toa allows you to just spot remove, right? You play it, warp a card from their hand, and you warp the 9-drop on board, right? Now, something to know in this matchup is when you're doing the 9-drop play, whenever your opponent has a 9-drop in play, you want to make sure that you are warping the 1-star ball from the drop area first, right? So whether that's using a ball combination, whether that's using, you know, something else, you have the ability to, you want to warp the ball from the drop area first, then Toa. So whenever you Toa, you warp the 9-drop, they draw 2, and then they go to play a 1-drop from the drop, and they have no 1-drops, so then they don't get to play out a 1-drop, right? So then it sets them back another turn. Now they have to pay 2 energy to go into the 2 energy to go in, or what, 3 energy? Yeah, they have to pay 3 extra energy now to go into the 9-drop instead of paying the normal 2, right? This gives you an extra turn to where they can't maybe do as much. They may have to go into the Omega effect, may have to do something else, but this is kind of the early way of how you want to play the game, right? And in the rest of the game, you're just essentially just, you know, spot removing what they have on board, swinging at leader, and, you know, slowly pushing them down until kind of force them into a big play where then you can just out resource them and then kill them, right? Now, there's a lot of cards in this in this deck that they use to gain, you know, tons of advantage in normal matchups. And here I have 10 cards. It's kind of hard to see the other 2 on the other side, but we have 10 cards here that are, you know, probably the best 10 cards in the deck. And we're just kind of go over some of their effects here, so you guys can kind of understand what their deck is trying to do, right? So this is the 3-drop Natron. This is their double striker. They're going to play it off of the Nova that you see here in the middle, realistically. And this card will stop a Unison or a battle card from being played in active mode. They'll just switch it to rest mode, right? So this being on board, kind of stops you from playing some of your big boss monsters, right? Especially when they have on-swing attacks, because you're gonna play it and you're gonna play right into it. They're just gonna tap it, stop you from doing anything, right? It's very, very irritating. Plus, it is a double striker, and being a 15k can pressure all of your unisons, except for, you know, your 20ks. And also can pressure your leader, and it's a very, very annoying card to deal with. So this is something that you're gonna want to watch out for. Now, obviously, the next card here is gonna be 9-drop. This is the best card in the deck. Blocker Revenge turns all of your cards into skills battle cards for the turn that they are played. It does not have unique, whatever, right? This card is incredibly powerful, but that's what our Toa is for. Toa is going to remove this card off board, and once they get removed, they can draw 2, and then they can play up to 1-drop from the 1-star ball from the drop. However, I said before, you're going to warp the 1-drop ball, and now they're not going to have a target, so they're going to draw 2, which is great. That's fine, whatever. But now they got to pay 3 energy down to go back into their chain instead of the original 2 energy. Next one is going to be the 4-drop Nova. Nova's cool. Nova can be played out for 1 if they have a Shadow Dragon in play, and they have the second effect where it switches to rest mode, burst 2. Then they can play a 15k a less battle card with 19k less battle card with 2 or more energy, with the different names once in play, with the skills gated for the turn. What's cool is that they can play out most of their small guys, as well as the 4-drop Shin and the 3-drop Natron. There's other cards that they can play too, but that's generally the best option for them. This card also has unique, so they can't actually play multiple of these, which is great for you. But this does essentially get them really, really close to playing something like Xenosin, if that's a card that they play in their deck, right? So this is definitely a target that you want to remove as soon as you can. Probably not the most, not as important as something like the 9-drop. Definitely something that can just create value for them. But also this card actually creates value for you, because now they have the burst, and when they burst, they're getting rid of cards that they could potentially draw into, and 2, they're giving you cards that you can warp away, which is incredibly good for you. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us. The next one is going to be the 4-drop Oceanus. This card's really good too. It's you pitch it from your hand, you burst 1, you search top 5 for a Shadow Dragon 8 or less, and they'll use this in tandem with the Omega. This card attacks. You choose one of your opponent's battle cards to the rest mode, and if that card is 2 or less, they'll KO it. So you can get rid of like Black Mass Sand, things like that. Also has Barrier Blocker, which is very important as well. Now, this card as well, they will use this. They'll burst this off the top. They'll use this to burst off the top, so they put 2 cards in their in the drop area. In early game, this is where the ball sometimes loses effects, because they'll just warp another ball from the drop area, right? Salsa is very, very important in this matchup. because of this card. So that way we can warp a card from the drop as well as using our ball. So we're getting rid of 2 cards, and it just kind of slows down their momentum of what they can play from the drop area. 5th card here is going to be the 4-drop Shin. Very, very good card here. This is what stops your leader from attacking if it's in rest mode, and that's why you want to sort of pivot away maybe from attacking your first turn, unless you don't have balls. If you don't have 2, you're gonna have to swing just to get them, and you're gonna have to just deal with the consequences. Now, if you can awaken, and most people know this by now, but just in case you don't, if you awaken when you're under the effect of the 4-drop, you do gain your skills back, which means you can attack again. So that's not a huge deal. Like if we have 4 balls in the drop and we have the ability to put 3 more in there on our next turn without swinging with our leader, it's fine, right? We're going to awaken, and then the effect's going to go away, and then this card, if it's still on board, is going to be gone. It's going to be gone one way or another, which we'll talk about once we get to our cards. Next card is going to be the 8-drop Omega Shenron. This is one of the 8 drops that they can play. This is their kind of their new ruler-esque type of card, right? They play it for 1, they warp 7 dragons from their drop, draw 1, now they have a 30k triple strike on board for 1 energy. This is another reason why you want to get rid of cards from their drop. You get rid of cards from the drop, their tap 6 doesn't really come into effect, and also this effect becomes much, much worse. If they can't play 7 dragons, if they can't warp 7 dragons, this card never will see play. That's incredibly powerful for us, right? Not having to deal with a 30k triple strike for 1 energy is something that you can, definitely, tip your hat to, right? So outside of that, I mean, this card doesn't. If they can't play it for 7, they're just gonna have to combo it off and then hope and pray that they can play it for 6 energy. But if that's the only card that they're playing off their 6 energy, I mean, it's not very worth it for them. Next one's going to be the 2-drop Rage Shinron. So this can be played off of the chicken ball that they play in the aggro matchup. And what makes it very powerful is the fact that they can play 1. They can play the chicken ball for 1, and the ball actually has no activate main cost to play the 2-drop out. So they can just tap 1, play that, and then pitch it to play this guy out. And when this guy's play, when this card attacks, they draw a card from their life, and then this card gains 15. This card goes up to 15k crit, and early, especially in a deck where we need to see our life just in case we have a card in there that we potentially need, like a ball, getting hit by crit and then searching your life and finding out you have 2 Dragon Balls in there is really bad. And it does happen sometimes, but that's something you have to kind of worry about, because if you are taking damage too early from this particular card, you're not going to be able to kind of stabilize, or when you go to stabilize, it's actually not going to be very good. So you just kind of have to, play around that a little bit. Now, obviously, you're not going to know, especially if you go first, you're not going to know what archetype they're playing until they put down the first ball, right? The aggro matchup doesn't necessarily play the 1-star ball chain. They kind of go into the 8-drop Omega, and they use this card a lot. So you kind of be able to tell if they play a 1-drop ball or they play this guy here, the Rage Shinron ball. So it's definitely up there. You just kind of have to. It's most people are probably playing the control matchup, but if you do run into an aggro matchup, you're going to have to be aware. This is why sometimes it's better to keep the 1 energy up if you go first, just in case you have something to defend yourself with. Maybe you have a negate, maybe you have combo power, just to kind of stop you from taking that first damage, at least until you can see your life. Once you see your life, if there's no balls in there, it's fine, because like once you grab those 2 balls, then you're good. Next one's going to be Mechikabura Unison. The Mechikabura Unison is incredibly good in this matchup. Obviously, it allows them to awaken early if they play it. A lot of decks, a lot of matchups are going to get to 4 energy. So this is something that you do have to consider. Blocker, whenever it loses a marker, you can tap on any of your opponent's cards. So basically means all your energy, battle card, leader, all that stuff gets tapped down. If you are swinging with your leader and you're using your triple attack effect, right? If you swing and they block with this, and then you, at the end of the battle, your leader restands first before this effect will go off, because you are the turn player. So they can restand that, and then you'll restand your leader, and then they'll just tap your leader down, right? So it just stops you from actually gaining any more value. Incredibly annoying. Incredibly annoying. +1, draw a card. Choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, ignoring barrier, and then it can't be switched to active mode until the end of your opponent's next turn, which is very, very irritating. So they can basically just keep one of your cards locked down the entire time. And generally, they'll pick one of your bigger battle cards. That way, you can't restand. Activate main. They can choose one of your opponent. They can choose one of your battle cards, which is the active mode, and gain control over it. which means that any of your boss monsters that don't have barrier, they can just tap, they can just play this for 4 and then seal whatever it is, or they can just -4 on it. And like I said, this card, once you get to this point, definitely allows them to stabilize, so you have to be able to push them down far enough. Also kind of play around this unison, right? Being a 15k, sometimes you may just want to swing into it, right? Like if you know they can't kill you next turn, you can just remove this unison off board. Takes away a ton of pressure, takes away another draw card for them, maybe potentially another attacker. You may have to do that. Third card is going to be Shin Shinron, Harbinger of Ruin. This is a promo that came out, I think it's set, I want to say set 11, set 10. I may be mistaken by that, but this is a card that sees, I would say, play in the aggro matchup. I don't think I've seen it in the control matchup yet, but it's a 20k deflect. Activate main, choose one of your cards in rest mode, place it on the owner's drop, and choose one of your opponent's cards and switch it to rest mode. So this allows your opponent to basically tap you out of floodgates, just tap you out in general. And when this card is removed from the battle area, you get to add up to basically two of your ball cards from your drop area to your hand, which just gains you basically 10k combo power, as well as just other play lines that you can do when this card gets removed. A very, very irritating card. Definitely something to kind of watch out for. This is also very powerful if it's played off of the tap 6 effect, because they can play it, and then they can you can swing, like you can just pop one of your cards, tap an energy, now you're tapped underneath your floodgate effect, which could be very, very tragic. And the last card is going to be the 8-drop Omega Allies Absorb. This is a card that can basically absorb any of its counterparts and gain the effects of that card. Now, obviously, they have to be under. I think they have to be under 4 cost. Yeah, they have to be between 2 and 4. Then they cannot be the 4-drops Shinron and or the 3-drop guy. But you can choose Oceanus, Nova, Rage, any of the Shinrons, and gain those effects. And this then becomes a 30k whatever keyword skill, right? So the best target for this is going to be Oceanus. They're going to use Oceanus to make this card a 30k barrier blocker. They're going to swing, tap down a card, possibly kill one of your small guys, and use this to clear board, use this to just swing 30k at face, and then this restands. Now it's a 30k barrier blocker. Very, very good in this meta, since all the decks are not running the Realm Reborn cards, where you can just basically tap one just to pop the 9-drop. So this card becomes a little more difficult to deal with. And also, you get to draw a card when you play this card. You can also take up to 1 life, I believe. So very, very powerful effect there as well. Now, this card has unique, so once one's on board, it's on board, and generally they'll probably try to keep this card on board for a few turns. They do have to warp a card from their drop area in order to gain the effects, which means that if you warp away all their targets, they don't get as many lines of play now with this card. Now, for us, we're going to go over the 10 cards that I think really kind of put you in a good predicament in this matchup, where you can actually have better lines to play than them and kind of just outplay them in general. So Mechikabura, the Broken Seal. This card is obviously good in most matchups. You're going to main deck this card anyways in this deck. It grabs you a ball. Also, you can call any of their cards and stop them from playing it. So if you want to stop them from playing the 8-drop, you call Omega Shinron 8-drop. They can't play the TP. They can't play the essentially the 1-drop 30k that absorbs cards. You can call Xeno Sin. Put you in a very interesting predicament, right? If you get really greedy, you actually can call the 1-drop, the 1-drop Sin Ball, and you can warp the 9-drop, and now they can't play the 1-drop, right? Like there's some very interesting things that you can do with this card. Obviously you're gonna play it, but being able to just call out any card. This card's probably gonna be in every video just because of how powerful it is. Second one's gonna be Demon God Poutine, Mind Wiped Malevolence. This is a card that in some matchups it's incredibly just non-existent, I feel like, because they don't play 4 or less. But in this matchup, it does very, very good things. You can take Nova, you can take the Natron Dragon, you can take the Rage Dragon, you can take 4-drop Sin, which is the most important one. Being able to take 4-drop Sin is incredibly good. Being able to take 3-drop Natron, which then you gain the effects of this card. So it's unlike your leader, which negates the effects. This card will just steal that card, switch it to active mode. So now you gain a 15k double strike where you can, when they play a battle card or a unison, you can just tap it, which is incredibly difficult for them to deal with. Not only is your leader able to steal 4 or less, but now you have this card which can steal 4 or less and keep the skills. Very, very good card for this matchup. Next is going to be Dark Shenron Wicked Wishmaster, and this card is I have a love-hate relationship with this card. I think this card is very cool in what it does, but there's some matchups where this card is just absolutely just dead. There's no reason to play this for 2 energy, right? The effect is, if your leader is black, when a battle card is in your opponent's drop area sent to the warp by one of your skills, you draw a card and then you warp a card on board. It is very powerful, and if you can stick this card against Control Sin, every time you warp something from the drop, you're drawing an extra card and warping a battle card on board, which is really good, right? Now, unfortunately, this card can't attack, so you don't get any other effect from it, but you just tap 2, and if it stays on board, which in the Sin matchup, it's this card's not going anywhere. It's just 5k combo power always, or you know, just going to allow you to just warp stuff off board, which is just going to slowly drain them of their resources. And net you a bigger hand size. In other matchups, this card's probably not going to be played, but in this matchup, it actually is fair to play this card. Definitely think so. Finn is going to be the next card, and Finn is incredibly good in this matchup as well. 2 energy, deflect. When this card's played, your opponent chooses one of their battle cards, and then the rest of the battle cards get sent to the warp. So if they do tap 6, or if they're just swarming the board with stuff, you can play this. They choose one of their cards, you warp everything else, right? It's a 2-drop board wipe. And then you can use your leader effect maybe to pick off another card. It just works wonders. This is a very good card to run in the deck. I don't see why you wouldn't run it. It's definitely something that you should be running in this variation, especially in this matchup. Next one's going to be the 4-drop Sin Shinron Negative Energy Explosion. I love this card. 4-drop Deflect Double Strike Barrier Blocker. Has tons of keyword skills, right? Second effect, you can Spirit Boost to restand this card. Your opponent mills a card. Very good because you can put stuff in their drop area, so then you can warp it, which is kind of the point of this card. Also, being a huge double blocker or a double striker is a dual double striker is incredibly powerful effect. It is 4 energy, so this fits a very strange spot in this deck where like Dark King Mechikabura or like the Devilish Dominator kind of fits in that spot. The nice thing about this is a 5k 0 cost combo, so it is always comboable, and you don't always have to pay an energy obviously to combo with it. So that is something very cool. Next is actually going to be one of the Dark Dragon Balls, the Dark Empire Strikes Back. This card, I specify you need to use this card to warp something from the drop area. Please don't just hyper rush your Awaken and not gain any value off of this card. I see it too much, and in order for this deck to do well, you have to use this effect to the best of your ability, right? Being able to use this to warp stuff from their hand, from their drop area, is where you gain the value from. So putting stuff in the drop area, from attacking them, they combo, whatever, and then you use this effect, it's better to do it that way. So definitely something that you guys, if you guys are playing the deck, you need to get in the habit of not wasting the effect just to cycle 2 cards when you're not being able to warp something from the drop. Next card is going to be Shin Noble Supremacy. This card's really cool. This card has a lot of value in a lot of different matchups now, but essentially it's a draw 1 when you play it, and then if you have 3 or less energy, your opponent cannot attack with battle cards 7 or more till the start of your next turn. So what's nice about this card is that they play the 9-drop, they play the 8-drop. Sometimes if you're playing against the aggro matchup, they're going to go really, really hard. You're able to play this guy on turn 1, draw a card, and then they can't attack with any of their big guys, right? Or turn 2, you're going to do turn 2. If you went second, this is a very, very good card if you go second. So if you go second, you can play this, draw 1, and now when they play their 8-drop or they play their 9-drop, it's just going to sit there. They can't attack with it, right? Turn 2, you can do the same thing, right? This will slow down their turn, just to give you another turn to deal with what they have on board, especially if you don't have a Toa or you don't have a way of removing it. This should buy you another turn. Also, if you do side or main deck Power Burst, this is a card that you can get back. Next card is going to be Koitsukai, for obvious reasons. Best reason is you can use Koitsukai and then warp their 9-drop and then kind of force them to play the 1-drop or not. More likely that they're not going to, but this is another way of you being able to just stop them from playing the 1-drop, right? If they decide to play, if they have a token negate or they play, you know, something else, right? You can just stop them from playing almost anything on your turn, as well as something like the Cryomancer counterplay, which I didn't even get to, being able to just tap any card that's being played. For 2 energy, this card will stop them from actually coming down, or if they want to play it, they do have to, you know, kind of penalize themselves by warping 2 cards from their hand. Next is going to be Shroom, Ritual at Hand. Now this card's very cool as well. This card has a lot of usage in particular matchups, especially a lot of decks in the meta right now. But being able to swing with this, warp a battle card from your opponent's drop area, and then warp a 3 or less on board, does have some very good usage. So the biggest target for this is the 3-drop Natron, right? But just another card that you can actually use to warp stuff from the drop area is very effective. That's something just to keep in mind, right? It just at the end of the day, being able to just continuously warp stuff from the drop area, and also acts as another Self-Awakener, it's definitely something to consider. You're probably going to sideboard it anyways, so in this matchup you can probably just include the 1 from the side and your game 2 side where you can awaken quicker. And the last card is going to be Dark King Mechikabura. Should kind of be self-explanatory. You tap 4, you warp their entire board. This card's coming down, it's got Deflect, it's got Double Strike, very powerful card. The second effect of this, you can actually choose 2 cards from your opponent's drop area, 7 or less, different card names, and play them in your battle area. In this matchup, you're probably not going to do that. If you do, the idea would probably be to play the super combos that they have, which will probably be Zamasu. If they have a Krillin, you're probably not going to play it because you're not going to gain the 10k combo power. But Zamasu you definitely would take just because it is a free 10k combo. But any of their normal battle cards that are Shadow Dragons, you're not going to take those back from the drop, because when you combo with those, or if those get cleared off board, it goes to their drop area now instead of the warp. So now they gain those cards back where they can actually use their tap 6 and do different things, right? So with this card, you're basically playing it. They go turn 6 or whatever. Let's say they play all their guys. Say you survive next turn, you tap 4, you play this, you warp everything. Get rid of all those cards. They're not going to have anything on board. Now you have a 30k double strike, which allows you just to swing. And like I said, the game should be over before you even get to this point. But this is just a card that you can use in your back pocket just to know, saying, hey, I'm going to win. I'm going to play this, and we are golden. Now, there's a lot of talking about this. If you guys want more analysis about this deck, you guys can let me know in the comments. I also can post stuff on the Patreon just for some extra stuff, because I know maybe people don't always want to see Mechikabura versus these type of matchups. If you guys want to see some extra stuff, just let me know. I can post on the Patreon for you guys to get that stuff exclusively. So I did a lot of talking, so hopefully the video was information. Hopefully I was able to kind of explain a lot of the card matchups, just some different things that you can do with the deck. Definitely Mechikabura has a favorable matchup against Shin. Overall, it definitely depends on the person who's piloting the deck, of course. But I think most people can probably pick up, if you know how to play Mechikabura, you play against a Shin matchup, you should probably win most of those matchups just based off of what the deck actually is doing, countering the the Shin deck. So, but that's what I have for you guys today. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.